I'd like to start off with what mediums you recommend I try.
Well, my first question for you is why do you think you need to try new media?
I find that really exciting. I really like experimenting, and I find myself getting bored with the same mediums over and over again. It helps me stay interested and passionate.
Well, what is it that makes you get bored with the material? What is the signal that says, oh, I'm done with this. I got to move on?
When it gets really, really repetitive, or if I've been working on it for too long, I like to have a lot of variety in my marks and my movements.
I think it's great that you want to try new media because actually, in my experience, a lot of high school students really don't want to try new media. They frequently find one material that they're very comfortable with, and it is so much easier to do something you know you're already good at. You know you're going to get very predictable, solid results. And so I think the fact that you have this almost hunger to try these new things, that's wonderful. And I want you to retain that pretty much the rest of your life. You want to think about, okay, what is going to fill in the gaps for me in terms of what I already know? So I'm looking at your portfolio right now, and I see already just at a brief glance that all of your work is very much mixed media. You have a lot of collages that you've drawn on top of. You have some three-dimensional pieces. And so it seems to me, looking at your portfolio, that there is this intrinsic mixed media nature to a lot of the work that you're doing that I think is really terrific. However, I do see you really separating black and white and color. It seems like when you do use color, the color is like an accessory to the black and white. It's just there as a little flourish at the very end. It doesn't seem to be at the heart of the artwork, or you're using color in a very bold, very graphic way, but not in a way that I think really demonstrates, at this point at least, a lot of sensitivity towards the subtleties of color that you can show. So my recommendation to you is to try any new material that really forces you to deal with color. You're working with a lot of stuff that starts black and white, and then the color becomes this way to enhance the black and white. You need to try a material where you have to start with color immediately. You can't add it on later. So for example, one drawing material that I absolutely love is these Caran crayons. They're basically like Crayola crayons, but the like Mercedes-Benz version. And they're beautiful. I mean, a lot of people think about crayons as, oh, it's that silly thing that I used in kindergarten. That's our association. But when you try these Caran crayons, you just cannot believe that something like this exists. But what I love about these crayons is that, first of all, they come in really garish colors. So you're using colors like bright magenta and lime green and bright blues. I mean, colors that for me, as somebody who loves black and white, were just a shock to the system at first. But the thing is, then when you have colors like that, you have to deal with the color. So if you want to do, say, for example, a self-portrait out of the Caran crayons and you're trying to make flesh tone, which is very subtle and very soft, and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I make skin tone out of lime green and magenta? How is that going to happen? You have to make that transition. So I think a material like that would be good. Also, oil pastels, I think would be fantastic. That's basically a stickier, messier version of crayons. Chalk pastels are great as well. I think you would love drawing with markers. Have you tried doing that before?
We went on a trip to Japan a while back for my brother's big birthday, and the Copic markers are cheaper over there, so I felt like I was obligated to get a set as a person who really likes art. But then I used them once or twice and they just kind of sat there.
Oh man, you are like committing an artistic cardinal sin here. You've got Copic markers in your house and you're not using them? Make yourself use them, because the thing that I really like about Copic markers is that they have an inherent transparency to them. And you can get other markers that are opaque. For example, there are lots of paint markers you can get. And I actually really enjoy using the opaque markers combined with the transparent markers, because then you get all types of different techniques. But the thing about the marker that I think is really nice is that it's such a blunt drawing instrument that you have to deal with your mark. Because, when you draw with charcoal, if you put down a mark and you don't like it, you can just be like, oh, let's just blend it away. But with a marker, it's like you put it down and it's this bright, obnoxious pink. You got to deal with it. I think it'd be really great for you to do maybe some quick sketches of your friends or your family sitting around. Primarily, it seems like a lot of this work is collage and ink and charcoal and pencil. What are some of the other media that are in here that I'm missing?
There's a pattern of faces somewhere in there that's gouache. I fell in love with gouache recently. There is some colored pencil, I think, and then a touch of digital. I feel like I did submit a little bit.
What you need to work on is color in terms of layers, because you mentioned earlier that you have experience with oil painting. Now, with oil painting, you have to mix the colors because obviously that's the only way to do that. But with Copic markers, you would have to just put one color over another color over another color. And those are basically the two ways to create color mixtures, is you either mix them with paint or you just layer them. And it seems to me like you don't like to layer colors. Do you have any interest in working in 3D at all?
It's really fun to think of something in a sort of a 3D space. This summer, I made an artist book. It was like a lotus fold where you opened it, and it was really beautiful, like laid out. And that was really interesting to make like a 3D physical object that you could interact with.
Have you ever thought about getting the collage and the mixed media to integrate with the artist book so that the artist book becomes more like a sculptural object? You can do a standard lotus fold, which is just, okay, it just opens like this. That's pretty easy. But if you play with it a little bit more, you can make the lotus fold go in all different directions, and then it almost becomes a 3D sculpture. The reason I'm tapping into that is because you're somebody who really likes to blend different media together, and it just seems like such a natural transition into 3D.
Thinking, I am working on this really large installation piece at school, and I was wondering if I pitched the idea to you, if you would have any suggestions. I was really inspired by the migration of the monarch butterflies, and so I got permission from my school to hang 300 butterflies in the hallway. It's this thick, almost plasticky, but it's paper with prints of the outline of the butterflies, like the darker marks on it. And so there would just be like almost 300 of these swirling around the hallway in orange, red, and yellow in a couple different sizes.
What is the material again? Is it like plastic, like acetate?
I can't remember the name of it. It began with a V.
Vellum?
Yes, vellum.
You said you're going to add designs on top of the vellum?
So we have a really interesting printer where I can put that in and then print those designs out and then laser cut each butterfly.
Have you gotten permission from the school and everything to do this?
Yes, and it passes fire code and everything.
What is your plan for actually installing it, like actually attaching it? Like, is it attaching to the ceiling? Are you using cables? What are you using?
So fishing wire is the plan. It will be hooked around a paper clip and sort of just stabbed into the ceiling. I talked to the administration, and that was about as severe as I could get. Like, I couldn't do any more, like, stronger bonding.
What is the material that the ceiling is made out of?
It's like thicker than corkboard, but it has a really similar vibe.
Is it called homosote?
I have no idea.
Because homosote is usually what a bulletin board is made out of. A lot of the art studios that I've taught in, they're all homosote, which has been painted with white. I think it's really good you asked me for advice, because installations are so much more complicated than people ever anticipate. Because I was a gallery director at Wellesley College for many years. And one of the things that I did, in addition to supervising professional artists organizing their own shows. I also supervised the thesis students. And so they always had this big show at the end of the year. They had a huge project, and a lot of the students elected to do very large scale, complicated installations inside the gallery. And I can tell you that people always underestimated the amount of time, the effort, the detail that would go into successfully hanging something. I mean, I had people who'd stroll into the gallery, they'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to work on this from 2 to 4. And they would be there until like midnight, still figuring things out. And so I think my advice when you're doing a site-specific piece like that is that you cannot be too prepared. What I would recommend you do is actually build a small scale foam board model of the space. So is this in a hallway or in a room or?
A large hallway.
A large hallway. Okay. And is it a space that has lots of traffic?
Yes, but it has a high ceiling.
Okay. So you're going to have to get up on a really high ladder to do this? And you're the only person doing this?
No, I have the assistance of the art kids at my school. The National Art Honor Society and the school's art club have all agreed to help me hang, as well as teachers and stuff.
Okay, so how many people are going to be actively working on the installation with you at a time?
Yeah, at one time, I would say maximum 10, minimum me.
Okay, my recommendation to you, don't get 10 people. I think that is too many cooks in the kitchen, because what you'll find is that when you're supervising a complicated installation like that, some people are not very helpful. They may be very well-meaning, but they may not actually help you that much. They might actually end up getting in the way. I would pick 3 people who you know really well, who you really trust to do a good job, and just work with those people. Some people might think, oh, that's great, your teachers want to help you. Just because they're teachers doesn't mean they're going to be helpful at an art installation. Make a small scale model and just mock it up a little bit in advance so that you really know exactly the height of everything. Like, for example, you said that they're on fishing line.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know the exact height of every single fishing line from the butterfly to the ceiling?
Not yet.
That is the type of detail you need to work out. It's a very different installation if the length of the fishing wire is all the same. So let's say every single butterfly has a fishing line that's 4 feet tall. But then you could also say, oh, well, hang on a second. Maybe I want them to all be different. Maybe some of them are very short. Maybe some of them are very long. Those are the kinds of things that seem like small decisions, but actually are hugely impactful in terms of how people look at it. Another question is, have you had an opportunity to research any contemporary artists who are making installations that are somewhat similar in look?
No, are there any?
Definitely look at Sarah Z's work. Her work is really interesting because it's always site specific. So when she has a new piece, it's always a response to the space. And that's how you have to think about your installation. It's not that, oh, I have this piece and I'm going to put it here. You have to think about what that wall on the left-hand side does and how it affects your piece. So really think about your installation as almost being a partner to the space. Because what I see a lot is people just conceive of the artwork as just this own little thing, and then they just stick it in the space. And that's okay. I mean, you can do that. But I feel like the result, oftentimes, it just ends up looking like somebody hung up a chandelier, and it's not really that exciting. And so if you look up Sarah Z's work, you will see that she has pieces that really respond to the architecture. She made an installation that was called Blue Poles. It was at the MIT campus. And it basically looked like these blue ladders that were like climbing up the side of the building. That piece probably would not look the same if it was somewhere else. And so to really think about your piece as a response to the space, in addition to being its own distinct object as well. Is there a local art museum nearby?
Yeah, we have the Dali's really, really close.
You should actually call that museum and see if they'd be willing to put you in touch with one of the installers at the museum. Because when I used to teach at Wellesley College, the Davis Museum was on campus. And every time I had some installation question, I would ask the installer there. And it was awesome because he actually gave me this catalog that was this site that had all this gear that was specifically for museums. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know this type of thing existed. And I couldn't believe these very simple things that I thought were super complicated. He was like, oh yeah, get one of these. And I was like, really? That's it? He's like, yeah, just do that. And so I don't think you should necessarily feel that you have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, I can't guarantee that the museum will definitely tell you that. But if you explain to them, I'm a local high school student, I'm working on this installation, if you're polite and not demanding about it, I think most of the time people are pretty receptive. I think this is such a great opportunity for you because a lot of students really don't go beyond, okay, this is my project, I'm working on it, I do it all on my own. And it's so ambitious for you to take on something like this. But I also think that you have to rise to the occasion because it is so ambitious. You do have to double up your effort for that reason.
What am I currently doing well in my art and what should I work on?
Can you tell me a little bit about what your goals are? Right now. I don't mean like in 15 years. I mean like right now, what are some things you would like to be good at?
I really want to improve my technical skill because I grew up with normal art classes in high school where they let you do whatever you want pretty much. I've gotten myself into some bad techniques. I never draw from life.
We have to have a talk now.
I know we do. And it's obvious. And everyone says that it's obvious. And I know.
Okay, so my question is, if you know, why have you not done anything about it?
Because it's easier not to.
I get it. I really do. Okay. I work with so many students and I understand how tempting it is to do that because it's so much easier. It's way more convenient. It's faster. You get better, quicker results. But the thing is, it's like, when you drink a big thing of sugar and immediately you get this rush, you're like, oh, I feel really good, right? And then in like an hour, you just feel like utter garbage. It's sort of like that. Like it will just give you this quick rush for a little bit, but long term, you drink that soda every day, you are going to pay for that. Here's the thing. I have a lot of students who really just do not know that they need to draw from life. Like they just have no idea. Nobody's ever told them that. Now, but you're not doing it, which makes you doubly as guilty. What are you so afraid of?
Failure.
Okay, but what is failure? What is a failed drawing? Describe to me what that is.
It's just something I'm not proud of.
So do you need to be proud of everything you do?
No.
Let's say you do 10 drawings. How many of those 10 drawings do you need to feel proud of to not be a complete wreck at the end of the day?
I'd say at least 10.
You have to get over the desire for instantaneous gratification. You have to change your mindset a little bit because this to me is not about, oh, Kira, you're doing the wrong thing. Because I can tell from looking at your portfolio that you're somebody who is very creative. Like you're doing all this mixed media stuff. So many high school students at this point are doing realistic pencil drawings of, I don't know who's hot right now. Harry Styles, maybe he's not hot anymore. My larger concern is that you seem to be very focused on the end result. And that can be very problematic for people because when you set yourself up to have such high expectations, it's like you're setting yourself up to feel really crappy. Just have no expectations. You won't feel like, oh God, if this doesn't come out good, I'm horrible. And it's not really that bad because you know what? Let's just picture this. Okay, worst case scenario. You do a drawing. Oh, it's horrible. What happens next?
Move on.
But how do you move on? You feel so bad. It's like one of the worst. Like you're so embarrassed you don't even show it to anybody.
I'd try again.
And what if that one is also terrible?
Try again.
At some point, do you say, you know what? Screw this. I'm done. I'm never going to make any artwork ever again?
Definitely not.
Here's the thing. If you said to me, yes, I would do that, I would say, okay, Kira, go do something else. You're not cut out to be an artist. But clearly you are, because you said, no, I would move on. Do you think that maybe the larger rewards that you could reap from pushing through the embarrassment of crappy artwork might maybe be worth it?
Definitely.
I think what you can do is you can find other ways to give yourself the instant gratification. It's different for everybody. A lot of high school students I talk to love doing fan art. It's like their greatest indulgence. I don't know if that's something that you're into. And I say to students, you know what? If it makes you feel good, then do it. Who cares? And they're like, yeah, but you don't like, I'm like, yeah, I don't like fan art, but who cares? I mean, I do plenty of things that I know, like I know I shouldn't eat Sour Patch Kids, but they taste good and I like it and I'll do it once in a while. Okay. So it's almost like you have to let yourself have these artistic indulgences. When I do a drawing that I'm really trying hard on and something goes really badly, I'm going to just do some fan art and feel really good for a little while. Or I don't know, go eat chocolate. That's what I do. You can make spaces for things. You can say, okay, today's the day that I can draw whatever I want and not feel embarrassed, and who cares? Nobody will judge me. And then the next day you say, okay, today's the day when I really take a leap of faith and I try something that I have no idea is going to work out. I'm going to use a material that I am not familiar with, that I have no clue is going to work out, but what will be, will be. I am not in a frame of mind to want to finish anything. And I will say to myself, okay, Clara, you got 3 months. From now until December, you don't have to finish anything. You can just sketch your heart out. You can just make stuff, not finish it, throw it away, start again. And I love that freedom of feeling that I don't have to finish anything. But then inevitably what happens is at the end of that period, I end up going, oh man, I never finished anything. This is so annoying. I want to finish something now. So then I'll say, okay, next month, you're going to do really finished, slow, careful work. So I think just being more decisive about it, instead of just saying, I have to be amazing every single time I pick up a pencil, which nobody is. I mean, it's just not possible. You can't have expectations like that. You're going to drive yourself crazy. To go back to your initial question, which is, what can I improve upon? You answered it yourself. You got to draw from life.
Yep.
Tell me how you're going to do that. What is your plan? How are you going to make yourself draw from life?
Well, I have times on weekends where I like to go for walks. So I figure I can just bring a sketchbook and sit down on a park bench and draw a duck.
What is a routine you could make that would happen more often than on the weekends?
I could sketch the kids in my class.
Yes, absolutely. I had an intern on Art Prof. You know what she used to do? She'd have her sketchbook out during lunchtime. She'd draw her friends during lunch. And they were so funny. I mean, and she did it so much that people just got used to it and nobody cared, because I think the first time you do it, everybody's like, oh, what are you doing? You're a weirdo. But then you do it a couple times and nobody really notices very much. But I have to tell you, you can find some very funny situations. Like actually over Christmas break, I was visiting my nephews and my kids were playing Minecraft for like, oh my God, way too long. When people play video games, they don't move. Like they just sit there like this. And it's like just the fingers are moving. And I was like, wow, this is perfect. So I just did drawings of them playing video games. And it was like these models that never moved. So I think you have to carve out spaces where drawing from life becomes more casual. Get a little tiny book that's so small. You just whip it out whenever you can. You do a quick sketch of somebody. The same student, her name's Julie Sharp. You can watch her sketchbook video later on. She did the funniest drawing. It was of her mother on the phone with a phone company yelling at them like, you guys messed up my bill. It was just the funniest drawing. It was so expressive. And it's like, you can't fake that kind of thing that you can capture in real life. I look at your portfolio, you have so much going for you in terms of your engagement with the material. And actually, one of your best skills, I definitely think, is composition, because I'm looking at all of these. I really feel that every single drawing that you sent me and collage, I mean, maybe one, this one with the two hands and the yellow circles and the green rectangles, that one, not so hot in terms of composition. But the rest of them really feel like compositions. I see you creating a space. I see you thinking about a background and how you're engaging the different shapes together. I think that's really outstanding. You don't have the drawing chops yet. You need the drawing chops to support your compositional skills. Once you get those two skills together, you're going to be like unstoppable. It's going to be awesome. But you got to do the work to get there. And it takes time. Drawing is practice. It's doing it every day. Like, do you play a sport or anything?
I'm a cheerleader.
Could you just do cheerleading once on Saturdays and get through everything?
No.
So I want you to think about drawing from life like that.
Are there any other like specific technique exercises for like maybe always really struggle with perspective?
What you're referencing is linear perspective, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
The thing about linear perspective is that you really have to have somebody teach it to you specifically. Mm-hmm. Because the thing about linear perspective is that it's the only thing in visual arts where there is a very clear cut, this is right, this is wrong. I don't know if you have the resources right now for somebody to really walk you through linear perspective, because it's not impossible to learn on your own, but I do think it's very hard to learn on your own. The concept is simple, but the thing is, a lot of people understand linear perspective intellectually, like they understand, okay, this is a vanishing point, this connects to this. They understand like the mechanics of it, but applying the mechanics into the context of a drawing and a painting, that's where I think people really lose themselves. Until you actually get to take a course where somebody who's trained with those skills can really teach it to you, I don't really think it's worth trying to learn it on your own, because you're going to be banging your head up against the wall. Because as you know, you're going to Google linear perspective, 50,000 tutorials are going to come up, and probably 49,999 of them are going to be terrible. And instead, the better way to do it is anytime you draw something, always draw what's behind it. You're looking at me right now. Obviously, you see my face, but things like the angles of the wall and the ceiling, if you were to do a quick sketch of me, don't just draw my face, draw those angles in the background. And now I think at first that feels like, oh, that's sort of ugly. I'd much rather just draw the face and leave it at that. But I think learning how to contextualize the subject is very, very important, because you just can't draw people floating in white space. It just doesn't work out that way. A lot of your backgrounds are really exciting and they're very dynamic. You have a lot happening, but what you don't have going on in the space is there's not a lot of depth. Like, I don't really understand what's really close, what's far away, what's in the middle. There's some really simple things you can do. For example, you can change the scale of something. Let's say there's a row of streetlights, okay? You can put a big streetlight in the front, little streetlights in the back, and then you know, oh, okay, those streetlights are very, very far away because they're so small, they're in the distance. So there's things like that that you can do instead of linear perspective that almost achieve the same illusion of space without you having to learn all the mechanics of that. That basically is this idea of atmospheric perspective. Draw the space. That's what a lot of people just skip over. They don't think about it.
From what you can see, how do you think am I headed in the right direction for art school?
Stylistically speaking, a lot of the work is really similar. And I'd like to see a broader representation of different stylistic choices. Because if I were to sum up pretty much what I'm seeing of the images that you gave me, obviously this is a limited selection of the other pieces that you have, is that a lot of it is very graphic. A lot of it is collage, also with very graphic shapes. Most of it is not drawn from life, and you're pretty weak in the drawing area right now, at least from the images that you've sent me. Moving forward, you really got to beef up the drawing, because the drawing is such a critical part of the portfolio. I think what's hard for a lot of students, and for everybody, myself included, is to really confront your weaknesses, because it's so much more fun to do stuff you're good at. more stylistic collage pieces, I think a lot of them have potential, but they do start to get a little bit repetitive. I do start to feel like, okay, that's your shtick. I'm seeing you do it again and again. And some are better than others. Like you have this one here, which has the giant eye in the upper right-hand corner. It's got like big red behind the eye. Like that piece, I think, is very different from some of the other ones. There's a lot of female eyes that look like Hollywood stars, and you're falling into a lot of cliches, I think, that you want to try to avoid. High school art, I think, is famous for just being all about cliches. So what I say to a lot of students is, look, if you want to avoid what those cliches are, you got to identify what they are first. So actually, one thing that I did the other day was I said, okay, what are some of the quintessential problems people have with drawing? And so I just did a Google image search, high school self-portrait drawing. Everybody's doing the same thing. I'm so excited about this Illustrator piece of the jellyfish. Can you tell me a little bit about how you made that?
Yeah, it's this tool called the blend tool in Illustrator, which you can draw outside lines like bounds, and then you can blend them. So Illustrator will put the lines in between your two shapes, and it helps create this curve. And what I did is I changed like the weight so that it would be thinner at the end and thicker in the middle. And I felt like that helped create shadow when really everything is just a white line.
After I'd seen a bunch of pieces, I was starting to see a lot of patterns in a lot of the pieces. And then the piece with the jellyfish popped up, and I went, whoa, where did this come from? It was such an anomaly within the context of your portfolio. And that's exactly why I'm so excited about that piece. If it wasn't in your portfolio, I think I would have a much narrower view of the kind of artist I thought you were. But then I'd see that jellyfish piece and I think, wow, you're capable of so much more here because of that one artwork. You know what you need to do. It's not that you don't know, you just have to do it now. And quite frankly, that is the most difficult part. That leap from thinking, I should draw, to actually putting your hand on the paper and doing something is oftentimes a really big leap. We hope you guys will consider purchasing a Skype session with one of the Art Prof staff, from myself, from one of the teaching artists. You can choose anybody based on their expertise, what you want to talk about. We're happy to have discussions with you guys about any of your artistic needs. Good luck with your future projects.
Thank you so much. It's been so cool.
Bye. Thank you so much. Have a good night.